Welcome back to the Pitwall Pod. The Formula One grid heads to the iconic Hungaroring for the final race before the summer break. With championship points on the line and momentum up for grabs, let's dive into everything that happened at the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix. Formula One returned to the Hungaroring with an action-packed opening practice session, and it was Charles Leclerc who set the pace for Ferrari with a blistering 1:19.075 seconds, finishing nearly half a second clear of Max Verstappen. However, Leclerc's strong session ended in frustration after a mechanical issue forced him to stop near the pit lane with just 7 minutes remaining. Verstappen finished second despite complaining about his car's downshifts throughout the session, while Ferrari Lewis Hamilton completed the top three. Isaac Hadjar impressed once again by placing fourth for Red Bull, with George Russell rounding out the top five for Mercedes. The session also featured five rookie drivers, including Fred Vesti, who stepped into championship leader Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes for FP1 as part of the mandatory rookie running. Elsewhere, Lance Stroll caused the only red flag after suffering a rear suspension failure that sent his Aston Martin into a spin before coming to a stop. Despite the interruption and Leclerc's late mechanical problem, Ferrari looked extremely competitive heading into the rest of the weekend, while Red Bull and Mercedes remained close behind as teams continued elevating their latest upgrades ahead of qualifying. The Ferrari momentum continued in Budapest as Lewis Hamilton topped the second practice session of the Hungarian Grand Prix, beating his teammate Charles Leclerc by just a tenth of a second. After Leclerc led FP1, Ferrari once again showed strong pace around the Hungaroring, with both cars looking like serious contenders for the weekend. Lando Norris placed third for McLaren, while Max Verstappen finished fourth after a challenging session where he reported issues with debris hitting his car and struggled to find the perfect balance. George Russell completed the top five for Mercedes. The windy conditions made this session difficult for many drivers, with several complaining about balance problems and low grip. Russell described his Mercedes as a feeling out of balance, while others struggled with lockups and instability around the circuit. The session was interrupted by a red flag after Franco Colapinto lost control of his Alpine at the final corner and crashed into the barriers, creating overnight repair work for the team. When qualifying simulations resumed, Ferrari once again showed their strength. Leclerc briefly moved to the top before Hamilton responded with the fastest lap of the day, 1:18.729 seconds. Behind the leading group, Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson impressed inside the top seven, while Oscar Piastri finished seventh after returning to the McLaren following rookie running in FP1. Championship leader Kimi Antonelli had a tougher session, ending outside the top 10 after missing FP1. After the first day of running, Ferrari looked like the team to beat at the Hungaroring, but with qualifying still ahead, Red Bull, Mercedes, and McLaren remained within striking distance. Free practice 3, the final practice session before qualifying, saw Lando Norris put McLaren on top, setting the fastest lap of the weekend so far with a 1:17.939 seconds. He finished just over a tenth ahead of Lewis Hamilton, while championship leader Kimi Antonelli continued Mercedes' strong pace in third. The session was incredibly competitive, with McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes all taking turns at the top of the timesheets. Charles Leclerc finished fourth after briefly leading the session, while Oscar Piastri completed the top five. An early red flag interrupted the action after Sergio Perez suffered an engine failure leaving the pit lane, forcing his Cadillac to stop on track. Once the session resumed, teams focused on their final qualifying simulations in the hot Budapest conditions. Antonelli briefly looked set to end practice on top after setting the fast lap with 15 minutes remaining, but Hamilton and Leclerc quickly responded for Ferrari, before Norris delivered an outstanding final lap to reclaim P1. Further down the order, George Russell finished 6th ahead of Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar, who described his Red Bull as undrivable late in the session. Liam Lawson impressed in 9th, while Nico Hülkenberg rounded out the top 10 for Audi. With Norris leading Hamilton and Antonelli, the final practice session confirmed what had already been clear all weekend. Qualifying promised to be a close fight between McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes, with only a few tenths separating the front runners. Qualifying, Lando Norris claimed a sensational pole position for the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix, delivering a stunning lap of a 1:17.207 to snatch P1 from Lewis Hamilton in the closing moments of Q3. The McLaren driver timed his lap perfectly, setting the benchmark despite late yellow flags caused by Max Verstappen's spin and George Russell's stranded Mercedes. Hamilton initially qualified second, just a hundredth of seconds behind Norris, with Charles Leclerc completing the top 3. Kimi Antonelli finished 4th, while Oscar Piastri rounded out the top 5 in a tightly contested qualifying session. However, the grid changed after qualifying. Hamilton received a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Piastri during Q3, while Antonelli was also handed a 3-place penalty for failing to slow enough under yellow flags. As a result, Leclerc was promoted to the front row, with Piastri moving up to 3rd and Verstappen inheriting 4th on the grid. Throughout qualifying, McLaren and Ferrari looked evenly matched, with Mercedes also firmly in the fight. Norris topped both Q1 and Q2 before delivering when it mattered most in Q3, securing his pole position with a flawless final effort. Elsewhere, Isaac Hadjar impressed once again by qualifying 8th, while Arvid Lindblad secured 9th for Racing Bulls and Nico Hülkenberg completed the top 10 for Audi. The starting grid, top 10 after penalties: P1, Lando Norris; P2, Charles Leclerc; P3, Oscar Piastri; 4th, Max Verstappen; 5th, Lewis Hamilton; 6th, George Russell; 7th, Kimi Antonelli; 8th, Isaac Hadjar; 9th, Arvid Lindblad; and 10th, Nico Hülkenberg. After 3 closely fought practice sessions, qualifying delivered exactly what fans expected: an incredible tight battle between McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes, with Norris on pole and strategy playing a crucial role at the Hungaroring. Sunday's race was perfectly set up for an exciting showdown before the Formula One summer break. Race day, the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix, delivered plenty of drama, strategy and heartbreak, as Lando Norris secured his McLaren's first Grand Prix victory of the season, crossing the line more than 50 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, with Kimi Antonelli completing the podium. Starting from pole position, Norris initially held the lead into turn 1, but teammate Oscar Piastri swept around the outside at turn 2 to take control of the race. While Piastri led comfortable through the opening stints, Norris repeatedly informed the McLaren pit wall that he was significantly quicker, but was unable to pass due to the dirty air. The race changed completely after the halfway point. Following his second pit stop, Piastri caught the back of Carlos Sainz Williams while trying to lap him, and the two made contact, costing the Australian valuable time. McLaren responded by leaving Norris out in clean air, where he produced a series of outstanding laps that allowed him to jump ahead of his teammate during the second round of pit stops. Piastri's afternoon went from bad to worse, with a few laps later when a gearbox failure forced him to retire, bringing out a virtual safety car. The neutralization triggered another round of pit stops and reshuffled the battle behind Norris. Verstappen and Antonelli inherited second and third, while Ferrari attempted to challenge with an aggressive 3-stop strategy. In the closing stages, Norris controlled the race perfectly to claim his first Grand Prix victory of 2026 and his first victory as a world champion. Verstappen secured second place with Antonelli, while Antonelli held off Lewis Hamilton to finish third. Hamilton crossed the line fourth but received a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, dropping him behind teammate Charles Leclerc, meaning Ferrari finished fourth and fifth. Further down the order, Isaac Hadjar continued his impressive season with sixth place. George Russell recovered from a disastrous start, which dropped him from 6th to 21st after an anti-stall issue to finish 7th, while Liam Lawson, Nico Hulkenberg and Arvid Lindblad completed the top 10, and the first 2 points for Nico Hulkenberg this season. The Hungarian Grand Prix marked McLaren's first race win of the 2026 season, ending the team's wait for victory in dramatic fashion before Formula One heads into summer break. Top 5 Drivers' Championship Top 5. 1. Kimi Antonelli with 219 points. Second, Lewis Hamilton with 169 points. Third, George Russell with 160 points. Fourth, Charles Leclerc with 138 points. And fifth, Lando Norris with 128 points. Constructors' Championship Top 5. Mercedes, 379 points. Ferrari, 307 points. McLaren, 220 points. Red Bull, 177 points. And Racing Bulls, 66 points. And with that, the curtain falls on the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix and the first half of the Formula One season. The paddock now heads into the annual summer break before the championship resumes at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix, taking place on August 21st to 23rd, with the title fight heating up and momentum shifting between McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. The second half of the season is shaping up to be one of the most exciting in recent years. If you'd like to stay connected throughout the break, you'll find race analysis, breaking news, behind-the-scenes content, and race weekend coverage on Instagram at Empowered Paddock, TikTok at Around the World in 24 Tracks, and YouTube at Lights Out with Hanne. For even more in-depth coverage, my Race Weekend newsletter is available through the link in my TikTok bio, with every Grand Prix broken down into the biggest stories, key moments, and championship implications. Thank you for listening to the Pitwall Pod. Have a fantastic summer break. Enjoy the countdown to Zandvoort, and I'll be back with you when Formula One returns for round 12 of the 2026 season. Until next time, take care, and as always, lights out.